So St. Martin of Tours is the French saint that we honor this afternoon. He lived throughout much of the 300s AD, and he began his life as a Roman soldier. He was originally born in modern-day Hungary, served as a Roman soldier, and converted to Christianity at about the age of 18. The most famous story of St. Martin of Tours is that one day he was riding on his horse as a soldier in his full garb, and he's passing by this beggar on the side of the road, and it's a freezing either day or night, and he sees that this beggar is very ill-clad and is freezing. And so out of compassion for this man, Martin, the soldier, takes his cape off of his back, and he takes his sword, and he cuts his cape in half, and he gives half the cape to this beggar, he keeps half of it for himself, and he rides on. That night, St. Martin has a dream, and in the dream, Christ appears to him, and Christ is wearing that half cape that he gave to that beggar. And Christ tells him, basically, right, that man that you gave your cape to on the side of the road, that was me, right? You clothed me. And it's a wonderful affirmation of our Christian faith, right? That our Lord said, whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do it to me. Right? And Martin had no idea when he was helping this man on the side of the road that in a very true way, in a hidden way, he was serving Christ. So St. Martin of Tours became very, very well known for his holiness, to the point where people kept that cloak that he cut in half somehow. They kept it. And he became so popular and so famous as a saint that the early French kings, the Frankish kings, kept his cape with them in battle. So whenever the French king would charge into battle, he would have a priest with him who would be carrying the relic of Martin's cape. And that priest was called the capellanus, which in French turns into chapelain, which is where we get the word chaplain, that all military chaplains are priests who serve in battle, and they're named that because of the guy in the French army who was carrying St. Martin's cape. And as the French kings were traveling around France and much of Western Europe, right, the people there had such an esteem for St. Martin's cape, he was such a holy man, that they built small churches so that they could house the cape wherever the army stayed. So they called these churches, each one of them was called a capella, like a little cape room, essentially. And capella in French, again, becomes chapelle, and the word chapel for a tiny church comes from the little church they would use to hold St. Martin's cape. So this chapel of the Holy Cross is called a chapel because of St. Martin, and because of the wonderful and simple act of charity that he performed. Our gospel this afternoon, it's kind of a challenging gospel. It's kind of a strange gospel. It's the basis for a lot of Protestant belief in the rapture, which we as Catholics don't believe in, but it is a very kind of odd gospel. And one of the ways to read it is for our Lord to be giving us a really clear teaching of we don't really know, right, when he's going to come again. We don't really know when that very thin veil, right, that separates us from the real world, from the world that is to come, will be pulled apart, right? And we will be really faced before our Lord face to face. That all of our lives, really, we have to be prepared, that all of our lives we're living just on the other side of this very thin veil, this very thin cape. And sometimes that just gets torn back, right? We just kind of get to peek behind, like St. Martin, right? He gets to kind of peek behind the veil and see that our Lord was with him that very day. Our Christian belief tells us that our Lord is with us every day, right? Our Lord is always with us. And so much of our Christian life, our Christian practices, is like purposely kind of pulling back the veil and standing face to face with our Lord, so that I'm prepared for when this day comes, right? That I've been practicing my whole life. I'm ready to meet our Lord because each and every day I've pulled back that veil. Right? Prayer is simply pulling back the veil and becoming aware, becoming present to the one who is always present to me, right? It's purposely becoming aware of his presence. Christian discernment, right? It's kind of looking back on my day, looking forward into the future, and pulling back the veil and saying, where is the Lord in my life? How is he calling me? How is he speaking to me? Being able to serve the poor or doing acts of charity, right, is pulling back that veil and being able to directly serve our Lord in the poor, in those who are needy. That so often as Christians, we can forget, right, that the other world is just around the corner. And St. Martin is such a wonderful concept of this, right? That our Lord is truly with him always, and he could give his entire heart to him, his entire life to him. That even though he wasn't a martyr, the early Christians could say, but this man won a martyr's crown. Because even though he didn't offer his life to our Lord in death, he offered his life to our Lord every day of his life, right? That is a holy man. And so for us as Christians, as we approach this altar where our Lord is veiled from our sight, right? He's truly present with us, but we don't get to see him, right? Let us, in faith, make ourselves present to him, right? To stand before him, as St. Paul says, with unveiled faces, to prepare for that day in heaven when we will stand before him face to face. And through the intercession of St. Martin of Tours and all the saints, may we live today and all days in his presence, being willing, right, just to kind of pull back that cape, pull back the veil, and be with our Lord at this Mass today and all days.